accident, you know it's no walk in the park. Car repairs, medical bills, and lost time from work all add up. And if the insurance company isn't paying their fair share, you have to cover the rest, even if it wasn't your fault. That's why you need an advocate. Call us today, and we'll do everything we can to get you moving again. Come on.
You deserve clear, risk-free advice to help get you back on your feet. You deserve an advocate.
This is the Monty Show, the truth in sports talk streaming. When you want unbiased opinions about your favorite team without the spin, all you have to do is find the Monty Show, streaming live and available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on YouTube. And now, here's Monty.
Good Tuesday, August 27th, 2024 to you. As always, presented by The Advocates, theadvocates.com. The best injury attorneys in the business. I tell you every day, please do not rely on or trust your insurance company. When you get in an accident, they're not going to look out for your best interest. They're looking out for their shareholders and their bottom line. The Advocates will fight for you. The Advocates have seen every situation, so they know what you're going through, and they know the exact right moves to make. When you've been injured in an accident, you need to get to The Advocates at theadvocates.com, where you can chat with an injury attorney live online for free, and it won't cost you a dime. Theadvocates.com. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. A big day on the show for you. This Connor Stallions documentary on Sign Stealer Guy is fascinating. ESPN put out a story this morning detailing the stark denials and the wild radical differences in what Connor Stallions told investigators, and why Connor Stallions' attorney immediately halted the interview with the NCAA. Might want to go watch Sign Stealer Guy. That's where you're supposed to play the drop. Sign Stealer Guy on Netflix, this documentary about Connor Stallions.
Sign Stealer Guy.
Yeah, is pretty remarkable. We'll talk about that coming up. Another Pat McAfee controversy at ESPN. When isn't there a Pat McAfee controversy, right, at ESPN? But we want to start this morning talking about the Big 12 chasing UConn. Did a lot of work on this yesterday to try and get some inside information for you, and boy, did we ever uncover a trove. And I think it is a very interesting moment in time for UConn athletics. It is, without question, I think we've talked about on the show, the financial challenges that UConn faces. And I was talking to some folks around college sports and in college sports management who were telling me that UConn football in particular, as you know, UConn is in the Big East in most sports, including basketball, and independent in football. So they do not get payouts. And in fact, they run at a deficit, significant deficit. Some put it as much as $15 million a year in football, because they also have to pay rent. They lose ticket surcharges, parking, all kinds of money going out the window for UConn on football. And it is the number one question looming and hanging over UConn to the Big 12, because I am told when Big 12 administrators got together this week and last week to hear presentations on UConn joining the Big 12, that they were left multiple times asking the question, can we, the Big 12, afford to add UConn as a member? And I know that sounds crazy. And I know a lot of people can't seem to grasp the concept that adding UConn is essentially paying UConn to have athletics in their university, to have an athletic department. They currently, from the Big East, make between $4 and $5 million a year in TV revenue in their distribution deal. All of that obviously is related to basketball. They're a basketball brand. You can't tell me another sport that UConn competes in at a high level. It certainly is not football. So they would be going from $4 to $5 million to north of $40 million a year in distribution if they join the Big 12 and in the future get up to that top tier and 100% revenue. That's the biggest issue. And I think that's what's scaring the Big 12. I was told directly yesterday by sources close to the Big 12 that there is real concern about each current member's ability to pay the NIL related charges. First of all, obviously the lawsuit, the settlement, but you also then have to revenue share with the athletes that you have in your athletic department. So not only are you paying a $10 million a year settlement, but you are paying between $20 and $25 million in revenue sharing. And the more money you make, the more you have to pay out. It is a significant financial commitment from each and every institution to play major college athletics. And I think it is a very pertinent question. As we reported months ago, and we talked about yesterday on the show, the biggest question the Big 12 has about adding UConn is whether or not UConn, and by extension, the Big 12, can afford to play at the top level of college athletics when they seem to be hemorrhaging money on their college football program, which again, I think it is a very pertinent fact that they are an independent. They do not currently have a distribution TV deal. They do not currently have scheduling big game schedules built in because they're not a big game. Remember that as well. UConn football does not win football games. They rarely, if ever, go to a bowl, which would be the minimum bar of 6 wins. And they almost never get to 8 wins. And the question is, if you add UConn football specifically, because basketball is a no-brainer, I think we all agree with that. But if you add UConn football to the Big 12, should the Big 12 and its members expect that UConn can carry its own financial load when they are running at a deficit in their facilities because they pay rent, they have to give up a ticket surcharge, they don't get full concessions, and they don't get parking revenue? Let that sink in. Find me another program in a major conference who has to rent a stadium and loses money doing so. Man, that is a tough equation. And Jake, I do believe that it is the number one reason that UConn does not yet have an invitation to join the Big 12.
Yeah, and I mean, how can you blame the Big 12 for not wanting to, financially support that situation? I mean, it's not where, it's not where anybody would want to be. As you said, like there's not, you can't sit here and right off the top of your head say, oh yeah, these guys and those guys and these guys over here all do the same thing, because they don't, because it's not a great model. So for UConn, the question to me very simply is, are you going to play football in the long term? Does it make more sense to just cut football out, be a basketball school, obviously have your other sports, but predominantly just be a basketball school and go from there? Because ultimately we've heard the Big 12 considering other schools like Gonzaga who are basketball only. That conversation has been ongoing for quite some time. And it does beg the question for UConn. Does that make more sense? Because ultimately, in today's current climate with athletics, you can't be in a situation where you're constantly losing money and having to give away profitability because you happen to rent a stadium. That's their single biggest issue. If this stadium was sitting on their campus and they owned it and they could keep all that revenue, this would be a completely different conversation. But unfortunately, that's not the situation. And so if you're the Big 12, a league that is trying to, continue to secure its future moving forward, as there's a lot unknown in college athletics, it doesn't, to me, make a ton of sense to take a risk on a program like this. Obviously, you want basketball to contribute to what already is the best basketball conference in the country. But again, the risk is extremely high in football. Doesn't make a lot of sense to pay this football program $40 million a year to not have a return on it. And that's what's hard.
Well, and I think, pay them $40 million a year, and half of that's gone already. Because if football doesn't generate you revenue, can you afford to play in the Big 12 with all your other sports? I think the answer is no for UConn. You would not be able to, because also talking to somebody that is intimately familiar with the way that UConn revenue works, it is basically one of the most dysfunctional revenue flows I think we have in the entire country. Because you have to remember that UConn athletics gets paid and pays to the state of Connecticut. which is really awkward because the university actually acts as a middleman between the state of Connecticut and the athletic department. So essentially how all this works is the athletic department cuts a check to the state of Connecticut, who then pays that money to the University of Connecticut, who then pays that money, or part of that money, not all of it, part of that money to the athletic department. It is one of the most flawed systems. And I know from what I'm told that UConn's trying to address that, and they are trying to find a way. They are also trying to find a way to make more money through the basketball program, which I think is the genesis of why they want to join the Big 12. But if they join the Big 12, I was told yesterday by multiple people that they'd be looking at somewhere in the line of $20 million a year in a media distribution from the Big 12 conference. So a 50% distribution until such a time where they can show that their football program can compete at a higher level and earn revenue at a higher level. Because if you're not going to be able to make money on your stadium and on home games, it's a non-starter. And there are people in the Big 12, and I would put it at, based on what I've been told, half of the administrators in the Big 12 are a no on UConn joining the conference. And I think it's a very long road. I do not believe that we are close to an invitation, because there's going to have to be major concessions from Connecticut, the state of Connecticut, the University of Connecticut, and UConn athletics. They're going to have to illustrate how they intend to afford to compete in Big 12 football. Even though, from what I was told yesterday, they would not join the conference until the earliest as a basketball and all sport member until 2026. And there's a real chance that they may join only as a basketball member in 2026. And the rest are on essentially a trickle down calendar, because I just don't see a way, based on what I was told, I do not see a way that UConn athletics can afford to be a full-fledged athletic member of the Big 12 conference. They simply do not have the revenue to do that.
Yeah, and I just think you're either a liability or an asset when it comes to, revenue and profitability. You're either making money or you're not making money, and nobody's going to go out of their way to, subsidize that or cover that, margin where you're coming up short because your football program happens to be in a really bad spot, whether it's, and maybe that's the biggest issue. It would be different if your stadium was on campus and you weren't renting it and like you had revenue, but you were a crappy football team, right? Like you were just this team that wasn't really competitive at a power 4 level. And, that would be a different conversation. But this combination of, not having enough revenue plus not being a good football team, just to me is a non-starter. And it makes sense what you're saying, right? Like why would ADs or administrators in the Big 12 be excited to bring on what I call liability in financial terms, right? Something that is costing you more money than it's making you. That's how these guys look at it. Hey, if we're going to bring someone in and we're considering them both we're looking at it in terms of, what would it be as a full share? What would it be as a half share? How can we make this work? Because obviously we want the best team in college basketball last year in our conference. Well, there's not really a way to make it work yet, which is why I think we're hearing things like, hey, yeah, they'll join in basketball only. And then maybe the other sports can kind of come along as the years, tick by. And maybe, just maybe, they're going to either have to not play football anymore, or they're going to have to pony up the cash to figure out a stadium on campus. And that's just unfortunately the way it has to be done in college athletics for it to make sense. And we haven't even gotten to how you're going to go from just catching up, if you will, in football to actually thriving in football.
I don't think there's a way to make it happen.
Yeah,
I don't. I think you are going to have to find a way to get yourself in a place where you value UConn football over making money. And I just don't know that that makes a lot of sense, because the basketball revenue, as much as the Big 12 values basketball revenue, it's not enough to offset the hundreds of millions. And I think, I'm just going to tell you this because it's what I was told yesterday, but I think it's incorrect. There are people who believe that the cost of football in the next 5 years will eclipse $200 million a year. The cost of major top-tier power conference football will eclipse $200 million because of revenue sharing and NIL. I can't believe that. I just can you imagine a scenario where UConn is paying $200 million out of pocket to play football?
No.
I can't imagine fucking Houston. Can you imagine Cincinnati? The lower end Big 12 brands. Because if you look at the universities in this league that are the smaller brands, look at Arizona with its shortfall. Can you imagine Arizona spending $200 million on football?
No way.
How do you balance
a historically basketball first school?
And I think the real question here is, if you are the bottom brands in any major conference, Vanderbilt, Northwestern, any of the bottom,
UCF.
the bottom, UCF is a little different. I think UCF generates significant money through their athletic department. I can see UCF go. I mean, in that market where there's so much money in Orlando, I could almost see that. It's why I look at some of these programs like BYU. We'll never have any idea what their financials are. Could I see the church paying $200 million for BYU to compete in major college football? I would struggle with that. I would struggle with that because I just don't think, and again, this is my opinion, I just don't think we'll ever know the true level of profit at BYU football.
But at least with BYU, you can even just make any semblance of an argument that, hey, because of who's funding them, they have that kind of money if they wanted to do it, right? I mean, we all agree that at least in their case, the money is there if they decided they wanted to do that. That's the trouble with UConn. That's the trouble with a lot of other schools where it's like, hey, you don't even have the money to show up. That's the hard part. That's why the Super League needs to happen. That's why we need this delineation of, hey, in Georgia and Bama and all these top-end elites, best of the best schools need to compete in their own pool because they're just simply playing at a different level. And then we need to have another section that's lower. And again, it's this situation where schools like UConn are in between a rock and a hard place because you've been such a basketball juggernaut that football has essentially just been kind of neglected. Like, when's the last time you heard someone go into the draft from UConn? When's the last time that UConn made any type of noise in football? And that's what's difficult.
The money doesn't add up.
No.
And I have real fear for the future of college athletics in this UConn situation. The reason I say that, and I'm not trying to be doomsday or say it's not going to happen, I think eventually UConn basketball is in the Big 12. Everything else, I think it's a crapshoot. I do, because from what I understand, based on what I was told by sources very close to the situation, there are multiple scenarios that were presented to the Big 12 administration and membership that they're working through. One of those scenarios is UConn won't play football. And I think that is a
savvy decision.
That is a very interesting, because again, they're an independent now. And they're an independent because no conference is going to subsidize that football program.
What do you stand to gain by continuing to play football and sort of forcing your hand there?
And I'd also remind you, it's not like UConn basketball is maximizing their money. You understand that when they play in, and I hadn't thought about this, that this tells you how little I know about UConn athletics and their budget until the last 2 days when I've really gotten into this. I was unaware that they lose money when they play UConn basketball in Hartford. It is a break-even lose proposition because they have to pay significant facilities costs to play in Hartford. And they play multiple games a year in Hartford, both men's and women's. And I think you have to figure out how to fix that. The dysfunction in the financial methods, the financial,
Process.
the bean counting at UConn, it is very difficult to have I don't believe they have a full grasp on it at UConn because there's so much money being moved around just to end up in the starting point. Like again, and I want to be careful saying it's absolute because while I believe my source, it just sounds ridiculous that the athletic department pays the state pays the university pays the athletic department. I mean, that's a Ponzi scheme. All you're doing is who's ever getting paid back on that?
We're playing the shell game here.
It's incredible. That's exactly the right way to say it.
Playing the shell game.
And I don't know that you ever find the ball under the shell game, right? Like there's a lot of dysfunction. I think there are a lot of financial questions that have to be answered. And what sacrifices is UConn athletics willing to make to become a member of a Power 5 conference? And I think it's very problematic at this point. And again, I look at Gonzaga. Gonzaga has none of these issues. Gonzaga's money is very clear. They make significant bread. They play one-off preseason big matchup games that are revenue generators for the WCC. They make money for the WCC. They make money for themselves. Now, is it a lot of money? It's not because of their TV situation.
But at least with them, you can project it forward and say, hey, if you were in the Big 12 and you were getting better TV money, this is what it would look like.
Correct.
At least at that point, you can say, hey, like we can see what it would look like.
And we're talking about UConn, the best basketball program in the country, who is being, weighed down by the anvil of UConn football around their neck. And I don't know how you fix that because UConn at this point has been very reluctant to even have discussions about leaving football on the outside. It's been a non-starter as a basketball only. It's a non-starter, which I understand to a certain extent because you have a full athletic department, but that athletic department is struggling.
Yeah, but this is the same concept that we've talked about before, like with Pac-12 schools or other schools where you're sitting in this sort of gray area where you have a football program, but it's not high functioning enough. It's not doing anything for you, and you want to sit here and you want to say, well, our money is super unorganized and it's not, we don't have the financial organization. The spreadsheet is not put together, and yet here we are trying to get into a Power 4 conference in the Big 12, and we can't do it because we don't know how the money moves. Our football program is not productive enough, and we want to sit here and say that we're unwilling to part ways with football. And that's the stuff I don't get.
In the university, the athletic department runs at between a $30 and $40 million deficit every year. And the university is having to cover that cost. And I think it is something that the Big 12 does not want to cover that cost.
So when I sit here and I look at this situation, what I would be asking UConn is, why do you want to continue to have football given your situation? I would understand it more if you weren't renting your stadium and you weren't having to give away all the ticket money and the concession money and everything that they have to do.
But again, what is the real problem here with paying 30 to at a university like UConn? What is the real problem with paying $30 to $50 million to play sports?
Yeah.
Well, you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
It's $30 to $50 million that is not going into education. It's $30 to $50 million that's not going into better professors, better lecturers, better facilities, better halls, better dorms, better everything. better chancellors, better presidents, better department heads. It's $30 to $50 million that a lot of people on that campus believe could be better spent. And we talk about this. We talked about it yesterday with Michigan. We talked about it extensively with Utah. We get into this bubble where we all believe that sports is king, and we don't care because we've never heard of the tenured science bro that is trying to figure out how to make mold cure cancer in a petri dish in under ultraviolet light for 6 weeks in 38.65 milliseconds.
Yeah, and it's the classic situation of we don't care about that and they don't care about this. And
win games.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is I think it is. It is. It's remarkable to me that we continue to find ourselves in these situations where we allow sports to color our perspective in very bad ways. Because at places like UConn, is football really that important? What's more important, football or the science department? Football or the history department? Football or... And I'm going to tell you, it's the history department.
Well,
it's the library.
And I think we shouldn't be asking about football. We should be saying basketball. Even as good as basketball is, they care more about education.
But it's funny. Almost a direct quote yesterday from somebody very close to that situation. Basketball brings us more money. Basketball brings us better cut quality, better, more ready to compete and succeed students.
Right.
Because they want to go to basketball games.
Facts.
And they want to go to NCAA tournaments. And they want to spend their spring break, going to big games.
Yeah, basketball's relevant.
No kid is going to UConn because they can't wait for Saturdays in the fall. And I think that is a very good point. And when we look at where the Big 12 is, this is a massive moment in time. You add UConn, you have got to have financial guardrails in place. You got to, because you cannot afford, in my opinion, when they get into a power conference and they are on the hook for, let's call it at a minimum, let's just say $30 million in cost, settlement cost, revenue sharing, your cost is going up significantly here. Their travel cost significantly higher. Who's going to pay for that? They don't have a massive donor base, at least as it was explained to me yesterday. They're under $100 million in their budget, and 30 to 40 million of that comes from the school. I mean, the numbers don't add up. And I'm not trying to be Mr. Negative, and I'm not trying to be like, hey, this sucks in the world, because it doesn't. Adding UConn basketball to the Big 12 is a no-brainer. Adding all their other stuff is not quite the no-brainer.
Right.
And I think it's a huge question mark. And I think 2031 is the earliest that we would be talking about, possibly even considering adding UConn football. And from what I understand, there are some stipulations on that 2031 date, and we talked about this yesterday. But I got more color on that, in that they will need to meet ticket sales goals. They will need to meet private investment goals, private equity goals. They will need to meet certain stadium infrastructure goals. They will need to make certain football revenue goals. Like, there's going to be a whole bunch of financial ladders that they have to climb.
Well, and just think about it. Like, all those things you're talking about, like all power schools are doing all those things, right? They've got the stadium, they've got, money flowing through the program. Like, you've got all these things that, again, maybe the best way to say it is we as fans just take for granted that these schools do. Like we just take for granted the fact that Ohio State, has, I think what we say, like $180 million in revenue coming into their, football program every year. Like, we just take that stuff for granted. It's like, oh yeah, it's Ohio State. Like, these are the challenges that folks on the outside looking in are facing. So when 2 weeks ago we were talking about, oh, Boise State and Fresno State and San Diego State, like this is the conversation that folks in that position have to have. And it's difficult, man. It's not easy.
And I also think as we talk about the Big 12 chasing UConn, I also think one of the things you have to consider here is what else is significant about 2031? Well, that's the year that you're going to kick off a new TV contract. And sources close to the Big 12 tell me that they are expecting that next TV contract to be $90 to $95 million. It's a lot of money, man. And if you're talking about getting to that level of distribution per school, I mean, you're talking about doubling your TV contract. Like you're talking about adding 50 to 60% into the value of your TV contract. And UConn's got to be part of the equity on that. If you're going to add UConn football in 2031, there's got to be equity in that. Because there's no doubt, from what I understand, Fox is fully on board to pay, because Fox has the lion's share of the Big 12 basketball contract. Fox is willing to pay the lion's share to add UConn. ESPN and Fox are fine opening up that deal to add UConn. They have been on board with that. They have said that about Gonzaga. They have said that about UConn. And it to me, again, this UConn football, what do they add to the next TV contract? Because it's not coincidental that 2031's that date at the earliest entry point.
Yeah.
At the earliest entry point. And I think if you are Fox and ESPN, sure, on the basketball side, that makes a lot of sense. Because, again, remember the equities. ESPN gets most of the Big 12 football package. Fox gets most of the Big 12 basketball package. So they will share cost. And I can guarantee you that ESPN is not going to eat money on UConn football. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, and I don't think ESPN or otherwise. Again, it's a value versus cost. Nobody's going to go out of their way to add you when you don't bring that value back around. That's it's just not in proportion. It's not, the equation doesn't add up. And
I agree.
I think that, this, again, this is a lesson that needs to be learned at some point. You have to have, because think about how different this conversation would be if UConn football was the one winning national championships and basketball was as irrelevant as UConn football is. I mean, this would be a no-brainer of an ad.
Can the Big 12 afford to add UConn? I think it's a fascinating question, because I did not talk to a single person yesterday who was like, oh yeah, no brainer, we're doing this. Not a single. There are so many questions about the finances at UConn that I think are, and they're being answered. I think UConn to me, UConn has been very forthright about their situation. And I think it's just going to be a very telling 6 weeks, because I don't think this is going to linger. I truly don't think this is going to linger, because I believe the exit fee I was told yesterday from the Big East is $15 million in 18 months. So you have to give an 18-month notice, and you have to pay $15 million to get out. They have donors willing to pay that $15 million. They have the 18 months to get out. So my question is, if you are the Big East, can you survive without UConn? I think that's going to be tough.
That's tough.
Because, and to wrap this up before we get to your comments, the other thing here is, what is the value add for the Big 12 with UConn basketball? I think a lot of it is the Northeast. I think a lot of it, and I know we talked about this yesterday, but I think a lot of it would be the Northeast. And I am very interested to see, what is a decision in the ACC due to this conversation. And it was brought up yesterday as well by one source I was talking to, who said UConn's in a hurry now, because I think they know that if the ACC does in fact go worst case scenario and melt down, that may limit UConn's ability to get into the Big 12. And I think that's a very salient point.
Yeah.
I think that's because if you're UConn, are you a more valuable brand in the next decade than North Carolina or Duke basketball?
No.
You're probably not. You're probably not. And again, this is where I go to, you have this anvil hanging around your neck from UConn football because Louisville. Is UConn basketball a more important brand than Louisville basketball? Absolutely. Absolutely. But Louisville football is pretty damn valuable. Their athletic department on the whole, pretty damn valuable. Right? And you look at their Papa John's Stadium, pretty damn valuable. Right? You don't even know the name of the stadium at UConn. Right? What did Louisville do? You look at Miami. Look at the stadium situation at Miami. Blew up the Rose Bowl and everybody was excited about it. But you're not exactly excited about playing football at Miami in a half-empty stadium. That's why to your point, and I think to everybody's point, Mario Cristobal is under the gun right now.
Certainly.
Homie might want to learn clock management, which is why they hired a clock management coach. I don't know if anybody saw that. Again,
just to add to that fire, like Florida State losing just turns that up because now you have an opportunity to win that conference.
But Miami football it doesn't have the best stadium situation, but it's Miami football. And if they're winning, that place will be packed.
Yes.
Right? You look at UCLA. Does UCLA have a good stadium situation? Absolutely not. Do you think Cal doesn't have an on-campus stadium?
But at least with UCLA, it's Los Angeles. At least you have that helping you.
Yeah, but that place is empty.
I know it is.
And they don't have, they've looked into an on-campus stadium at UCLA and they just don't have the square footage to do it.
Yeah.
So I look at somebody like a Utah. Utah's campus is gorgeous. And I mean, you are steps away from Rice-Eccles Stadium. And I would also point out, what else do you have? You have the tracks line, the public transportation, the train, that anywhere in the valley, the Salt Lake Valley, can drop you off right next door to Rice-Eccles Stadium. Like, you have to improve your football situation.
Yes.
At UConn. And I just don't know that there's any way to do that.
Well, it seems like the equation, just generally speaking, for a successful football program is pretty straightforward. Now, getting it done is the hard part. Like, hey, the equation to me is have your stadium on campus or right next door to your campus, very close, and have it in a situation where you own that stadium, you're debt servicing it or whatever that looks like, but you own that stadium. That way you can keep all the concessions, you can keep all the ticket sales, you can, keep all that stuff that you need. And then from that point, ideally, in a perfect world, you would be able to get a bowl game at your stadium. You would be able to get, other major events that we see across the country into that building as well. That's where the most successful, stadium situations, happen.
And there is, like, I look at who's another Northeast basketball brand, Syracuse. I know Syracuse fan always loses their mind when I say this. You're not relevant. You're not. Derek Coleman ain't walking through that door anytime soon, friends. Yeah. Like you're state of play at like for the Johnnies at St. John's, or that's a basketball. That's your basketball neck of the woods. And I think, the funny thing is, why are you doing camps and clinics at Rucker Park? Because you value that neck of the woods for basketball. And I continue to tell you that at some point, if you add Gonzaga and UConn, basketball becomes an overwhelming win. And I think it is now for the Big 12.
Right.
But can you imagine having a footprint from Spokane to New York City to Storrs, Connecticut? Because that's what you're going to get. Now, I am not somebody who's going to tell you that UConn brings you New York City. I think that's one of the stupidest things I heard yesterday.
Right.
UConn does not bring you New York City. Stop. What UConn brings you is the ability to play games in New York City, to be in big games at the Garden. That's what you get. to bring in somebody like the Mohegan Sun Casino money, that's what you get. There's absolutely value there. Is there college football value in the Northeast? Yeah, I don't think I'm ready to make that argument. Because again, there's no finer example than Syracuse. I'm not excited about Orange football at the Carrier Dome.
Yep, totally agree.
Right? But that's my point here. If UConn didn't have football, we would be having a different conversation. And they would not be hemorrhaging money on their football program. Their athletic department program, $30 to $40 million a year the university pays to have athletics. Let that sink in. You're running at a deficit every single year. Even with the great Dan Hurley, who said, screw the Lakers.
Don't you know who I am?
You're running at a deficit. That's a problem. All right. The comment section is always brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app right now. Use the promo code Monty. And again, you guys, you have been signing up by the dozens, and it has been amazing to watch the rise of our promo code. You guys are fantastic. It really helps the show. We appreciate that very much. We love our partners at Prize Picks. America's favorite daily fantasy provider is Prize Picks. Download the app. Use the promo code Monty. You make a $5 deposit, they're going to give you $50 more. Plain and simple, cut and dry, no strings attached. $5, they're going to give you $50 more. It is the single best daily fantasy promotion I have ever seen. I would tell you, with football in the NFL, college football, powder puff football, Madden football, it's all at Prize Picks. And it's so easy because, again, pick your favorite NFL quarterback. Caleb Williams against the Detroit Lions. Will he throw for more or less than 999,000 yards in that game?
Yeah.
I'm going to say less. So I'm going to click less. Here's the formula to win on Prize Picks. You're going to make 3 selections. Baseball season, Aaron Judge to hit a home run? Yes. And the way it works is, with most baseball guys, Aaron Judge is different, but with most baseball guys, 0.5. Will Cody Bellinger for the Cubs hit a home run? Yes. Okay, great. More. No, he's not going to hit a home run tonight? Less. It's that simple. Because if he hits 1 home run, you win on Cody Bellinger. So you're going to make that proposition. Hey, is Cam Rising at Jetta? Or is Jake Retzloff and Jerry Bohannon going to throw for 226.5 yards, more or less? It's that simple. You make 3 of those, you play a $5 flex play. All you have to do is get 2 of those 3 right, and you win. It's so easy to win, and it's so much fun to play at Prize Picks. Download the app. Use the promo code Monty to get a $50 deposit from Prize Picks. All you have to do is deposit $5 into a new account. Prize Picks will give you 50 more. Use the promo code Monty, M-O-N-T-Y, Monty, at Prize Picks, the app. I always say .com. Go with the app.
Yeah.
The app is so much easier.
Easy
Maury Alvarez, first in today with his $5 donation. With BYU football, they have to be self-sufficient. So they will be able to put that much money in as long as they are making that much money. I don't think we have any idea, and I get it. Private religious institution. BYU is owned and operated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
In God's name, image, and likeness.
And their books are closed. It's a private university. You're never going to know, ever, how much money they have, make, spend, whatever it is. I would assume, because BYU fans, it's one of the most rabid fan bases in the country. I would assume that they do quite well. Are they making as much money as their brethren in the Big 12? I don't know. Do they make more money than Utah? Probably not. Probably not. Utah has played in some damn big bowl games in recent years.
Certainly.
Right? Are they making as much money as West Virginia, Cincinnati, Houston? I mean, they don't make as much money as SMU. Anyway, the point is, I think they are. I think they're probably middle of the pack revenue generators in the Big 12.
And again, they have the option to spend more if they want to. That money is there if they absolutely, just woke up one day and said, man, we really want to do this or do that.
Yep.
I'm telling you, that money is just sitting there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. All right, let's see. Who's first in today? It's probably Mike Smith. No, upset.
Wow.
Big Blue Horses. First one in, Real Pete Forte. Second, Mike Smith slipping. Morning Hyenas, hit that like button or you will get neutered.
Wow. Okay.
Please hit the like button. It helps us grow. Makes a big difference for us. It's Salty Virginia Peanuts. Hello. Damn. That's a bit rough, Mike. Yeah, we're not neutering anybody here. Hello. Oh, wow. Kelly Mitchek. What's up with you? Good to see you. Justin Bemis, Scotty of Greywater Watch. Hello. Willie Wilson. Yes, sir, my brother, Mike. Thanks for the reminder. Morning, everyone. How many views do we have? We're just about 1,000 views, and we have 37 likes. Come on.
Hit the like button, man. Come on.
God damn it. Hit the like button. We appreciate that. Good morning. Welcome to the nightmare. Good morning, NE. Hello. Hello, Glenn. Happy Taco Tuesday, loving sign stealer hating hyenas. There's a big sign stealer update. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Let's see. Glenn says, I meant Steeler hating, but I hate the Steelers too. Yeah, me too.
Right.
I hate the Steelers. Screw the Steelers. The Super League, Scott says, is going to cut basketball-only programs. The Big 12 is smart to go all in on hoops. I think the Super League is almost irrelevant to basketball as far as process. The Super League, I think, is going to make those who have the fortitude, the want to, the desire to spend $100 million a year on football. I think you're going to make 3-4 times that.
I want it.
But I don't know how many people are able. Everybody ain't able.
Yep. Which is the entire genesis of the concept.
I think that's correct. I think it is. UConn football does not belong in a power conference.
And I just don't think it should be taboo to say, hey, maybe not everybody should be playing football, man. Maybe it's not for every single institution in the land. It's fine if you're just playing basketball and then you have, obviously, the other sports that they include in their athletic department. It's fine.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, to me anyway, that we're so unwilling to truth tell about, I'm not going to say our teams, but what is the truth about UConn? They probably, basketball included, as an athletic department, they probably do not belong in a power conference.
Facts.
You want to go basketball only? Okay, I get that. UConn, I believe UConn's got a pretty solid baseball program. Like, UConn has good athletics, but they don't make money. They financially, and I think the tough reality is, if your university is subsidizing you to the point of $30 to $40 million a year, you don't belong playing in a revenue sharing league.
Yeah, and I think that's the side of it that fans don't appreciate. Is like, hey, that's cool if you have the best basketball team in the country, but if your accounting department is garbage, if you don't have good financial prowess to make sure that you're profitable and you're doing the things that you should be doing, what good is that ultimately? I mean, because that's really what we're talking about with things like the Super League and joining Power 4 conferences and things like that. Like, ultimately, you got to be able to show on paper that your university isn't subsidizing you to the point of $30 to $40 million a year. That you are, in fact, generating revenue and covering your costs. And I guarantee you, at any power conference meeting, there is an understood or a defined threshold for how much you can be losing and still be operating properly at the Power 4 level. Because again, we've looked at the numbers. We know that many power schools in football specifically run at a loss. And then, their basketball department, chops away at that. And then maybe you go to the College World Series in baseball or softball and chops away at that. Like we've seen that before. We've been down that road before. So the issue isn't necessarily that you're running at a loss. The issue is that you're running at a $30 to $40 million loss every year. And we haven't even talked about revenue sharing yet. That's the problem for UConn.
Yeah, I think it is very difficult. I think it is very difficult. And again, I just look at Miami. You're renting Hard Rock Stadium. And I understand that you have boosters in SoFlo that are talking about building a new stadium. And you're already, what are you, $10 million into your new practice facility and offices and weight room and what are you going to pay to build a stadium? Easy $100 million. Easy, right? So if you're UConn football, do you even have the $10 million to build new facilities? You probably don't. Do you have $100, $200, $300 million to build a new football stadium? You definitely don't. You don't. You don't have that in donors. At least at Miami, the Hurricanes have deep-pocketed donors, always have, always will. The corruption in that town is ridiculous, right? It's crazy. But are you better off building your own stadium, whether it's on campus or close to it? Or are you better off paying rent at Hard Rock that you're only going to get 50,000 fans to? I mean, it's a real question mark. It is a real question mark. And it's why I look at San Diego State with Snapdragon. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
But you're not as profitable as you want to be at San Diego State, even with a new stadium, because there's debt load on that. And there's, I think I look at, again, and I know every UNLV fan in the world comes out of the woodwork when I do this. I look at does UNLV have between $100 and $200 million a year to play at the P5, P4 level?
Hell no.
And everybody always says, well, Monty, this is a pro sports town now. We got a ton of people here. How many of them are willing to pay for UNLV when they can pay for the Raiders? How many of them are willing to pay for UNLV when they get major college football games every year, multiple? You get a bowl game. You get big made-for-TV matchups in the week 1 and week 0. Like,
LSU and USC?
My question is, even for somebody like UNLV, you're playing at Allegiant Stadium, which is great. But if you look at MGM, M Resorts, you look at Caesars Entertainment, are they willing to carry the freight for UNLV football in a P4 or in a Super League where you're probably at a cost of $200 million easy?
No.
You ain't got that kind of bread at UNLV. I don't know that you have that kind of bread at Boise State. You don't have it at Fresno State. You don't have it at Cal, for crying out loud. That's not a slap in the face. That's reality. That's reality. And again, you look at SC and LSU, Sunday night, holiday weekend, massive weekend in Vegas. UNLV, big game. Oh, wait. No, they don't. That's right. That's SC and LSU.
Right. It's not
That's
for
my point.
everybody.
I'm not trying to be an asshole about it. I'm just saying it is not for everybody. And much to your point, I hate giving you so much credit, but much to your point, Stanford, if you'd have won more games.
But what's Stanford's hammer? Well, we got the endowment.
The endowment and the academics at Stanford are always going to be more important.
So that's why they get the free pass of sorts.
Of sorts. Yeah. I think it's going to be very interesting to see.
But I just think it's a tough lesson to learn because I think that the paradigm shifted so quickly in college football where, 10 years ago, 15 years ago in the mid 2000s, you if you weren't winning in college football, it didn't mean that you were excluded. It didn't mean that you were going to start losing opportunities. Were you going to bowl games and making that money? No, but you weren't. It wasn't like you were getting, again, excluded, left out. But now, so often, I feel like, it's why SMU wanted so badly to get into the ACC. It's why, you see these propositions come up so much, because these schools see it. They see the writing on the wall. Hey, if I don't get in now and the ACC melts down, we're never getting in. We have to get in now.
Yeah. And again, if you're not winning football games,
what are you doing?
You don't have fans buying tickets or sweatshirts, or you don't have full seats. You're already losing money on concessions, ticket sales, parking.
And the other point is, how long have you been doing this? This is maybe the biggest indictment, a long time, right? Like probably, I don't even know. I'm not even educated well enough to know, but like probably 30 years, 40 years probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. James, UConn is like Baylor and Northwestern as far as size of the college. If Baylor can build an on-campus stadium, Northwestern is currently rebuilding. Northwestern doesn't have an on-campus stadium. I grew up down the street from Northwestern. I lived on Lincoln Avenue in Evanston, Illinois. And back in my day, it was called Dyke Stadium. They play close to campus in Evanston, but their stadium is not on campus. Isn't it Ryan Field now? What the hell is Northwestern football stadium? I think it's Ryan Field now. Ryan Field in Evanston. So being renovated, which is awesome, but it's not on campus. So all I'm saying is, when you look at something like Northwestern, I think Northwestern has a better, more accomplished football program than UConn. It's not close. So, if Baylor can build an on-campus stadium, Northwestern's rebuilding, UConn needs to do the same. UConn doesn't have the money.
Yeah, and I think you're grossly underestimating what Baylor already has established. Baylor's been at the power level for how long? You've been in a conference.
I don't think there's even it's not even comparable.
Yeah.
Comparing UConn to Baylor, it's not even a conversation. First of all, you're in the state of Texas. Hello. Second of all, like, UConn just is not.
And I've never been a big buyer on the whole student body size comparison thing. It's just not.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We're talking about, do people understand how small Stanford is? I think people believe that Stanford's some massive university. It's not. It's not. But the people who go there and the people who have gone there and the people that power that place, their money is unbelievable. Like, it has nothing, in my opinion, it has very little, not nothing, very little to do with enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
Very little to do. You don't have a donor base at UConn. You have your athletics is a loss leader at UConn. You don't have any path to financial independence that you could even begin a conversation about building on. And the other thing that from what I understand, they don't have the land to build a 50,000 seat football stadium. Because the other thing you got to remember is, if you're in the Big 12, do you want a 25, 30,000 seat football stadium?
No.
How does that look for Big 12 football? That's not ideal. So, and I'll just use the Utah Utes as an example again. It's one of the crown jewels of the Big 12. That stadium, Rice-Eccles Stadium, is unbelievable. I remember 10 years ago now, and if you're a Utah fan, you'll remember this, painting the warehouse in the north end zone.
Yep.
How much I personally donated money so that they could do that. Like, fans got together to do that.
Talk of the town, bro.
Right? Like, that's the level of passion that exists in this town for the Utah Utes. And You now look at the unbelievable renovation, and I know, James, they didn't listen to you and, put a upper deck
to block the mountain view and everything
and stuff.
Yeah.
But Rice-Eccles Stadium is one of the best home field advantages in all of college football.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, again, Autzen Stadium, I don't think Autzen Stadium's not on campus at Oregon. Autzen Stadium's in Eugene, right? Like it's not on campus at Oregon. So it can work, but you gotta field a football team.
Yeah, you got to win ball games.
It can't be akin to a club sport, which is really what it's been at UConn. You're not even in a conference at this point. You're an independent, right? I mean, I don't think that's that outrageous.
I mean, think about the difference in independence in football between UConn and Notre Dame, let's say. Like, Notre Dame is obviously one of the best brands we have in college football. One of the most iconic, one of the biggest, like loads, like, a century's worth of heritage in that program. Like you've got all kinds of stuff working for Notre Dame. And again, it's just because there's an investment there. There is a true, not just a financial investment, but a philosophical, like, hey, football matters to us. And that's what I think a lot of these schools can't get away from. You're not going to convince me that in the modern day that again, whether it's Stanford or anybody else, that football truly is on the forefront of what you're doing every day in your athletic department.
Correct.
Because if it was, we wouldn't be in this position. And so, again, you may play football, but football at UConn has been an afterthought. Like, I mean, the idea that you're independent and you're treating it like a club sport is wild. And now you're going to try and get into a Power 4 conference, and you're not surprised, but you're having to do all this legwork and all this stuff to try to justify it. And that's where I say that we should not be knocking the top, schools or the top athletic programs in college football. We should be saying, hey, they've set the standard. They are doing everything they can do to be successful. And that's where I think sometimes we go awry as fans. We want to say, oh, well, Ohio State's just spending more than everybody, or Bama or Georgia. And it's like, no, dude, like, they're actually running the program better. And so they have access to more money, and they're able to get the best players.
And Autzen is 2 miles from campus.
So maybe not on campus, but it's right
Northwestern.
There. Yeah.
Down the street.
It's right there.
Well, it's not down the street. It's across the Willamette River. But my point, and isn't Autzen Stadium's in the middle of their athletic facilities. So it's UConn's never going to have that. You can't be in stores and play in Hartford. It's just, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Tanner Plummer, the Big 12 shouldn't get UConn. End of story. I think they should get basketball only. That's my opinion. And hey, what do I know? You know what I'm saying? Willie Wilson, if UConn business proposal makes sense to Big 12 presidents, welcome UConn. They're going to have to figure out how to pay for it. B says Northwestern is spending $800 million on the new stadium. Yeah. But they have a football program.
Yeah. How long have you been saving up? How long have you had that cost in your projections? How many years? A decade?
Well,
probably.
And you're running car washes inside the practice facility to pay for it.
Yeah. Yep. The shower Olympics were quite something.
How's that Pat Fitzgerald payoff going? Mike Smith, right now, if rumors are correct, UConn does not have votes from the Big 12. No vote has officially happened. Correct. No vote. And I hope people understand where the process is. I think it's been widely reported. They've been talking for a month. They've presented twice to the leadership of the Big 12. And I think that they could vote to add them anytime they want, but I think the question is more, how are they going to afford it? And I think UConn, From what I understand, UConn's got some questions to answer that were a product of the presentation, and we'll go from there. I don't think it's happening today. I truly do not. Illumindursky, just remember, unlike SMU delivering Dallas, UConn delivers the entire state of Connecticut. It's in the name. Well, that's a good point. I mean, it does say Dallas across the front of Preston Stone's thong.
That's
Just
right, T.
Ask. Anyway, my point is, does UConn deliver at New York City? That was all over our comment section yesterday. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It gives you access to play big games at Madison Square Garden. It gives you access to, because right now Brett Yormark and Endeavor, I think, is obviously a big part of this. But I think Brett Yormark and his peeps want to create big events around sports. In basketball, they want 16 preseason tournaments. They want big one-off games. They want to be on the battleship. They want to be in those positions. And I think it makes a hell of a lot of sense. And you in my opinion, have multiple programs in this conference in basketball who are capable of doing that. Hell, BYU fans travel remarkably well for basketball and football. But you look at some of the opportunities that UConn, can you imagine a UConn Kansas, headliner at a 6-team preseason tournament or tournament event at Madison Square Garden? I can. I can. Can you imagine Baylor basketball? Can you imagine Houston basketball? Look at what Texas Tech did in basketball. You feel like they're going in the right direction, right?
Certainly.
Like you look across this conference at the basketball brands and you feel like if you add UConn and Gonzaga to that, can you imagine UConn, Gonzaga, Kentucky, and pick a Houston headlining a preseason tournament? Can you imagine Carolina, Duke facing off against UConn and Kansas? I can. Add who's an SEC, Alabama and Gonzaga into that mix. It's a no-brainer.
Yep.
You're going to sell a ton of tickets. You're going to have big dollar TV for that. Big dollar private equity and sponsorship. Like it's all the sense in the world. UConn makes you a more valuable basketball brand.
Which maybe is another question that needs to be asked. Like, how has UConn not been involved in stuff like that already?
It's an inch because they're in the Big East.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because they're in the Big East. In all seriousness, isn't Northwestern doing charity car washes to raise money?
Yeah, I'm not talking about that.
Brandon,
Wow.
we
Wow,
would
dude.
never talk about such things on this show. Justin Bemis, eating popcorn, watching financial lessons about the Big 12 schools.
That's correct. Yeah.
It matters. It matters.
Yep.
It matters. And again, I just look at the ACC part of this. And you look at the targets, the Big 12, because as we broke the story on this show, they've talked to Duke, Carolina, Louisville, Miami. I mean, none of those programs are drowning. None of them. If Mario Cristobal loses one game this year, he might be the new mayor of Miami. The guy might be the next god.
Finally.
Right? Again, if he doesn't fumble the football away, trying to burn the clock. But if Mario figures himself out and Miami wins every game but one, that's a different town. Right? Because I think you have real brands there. I think Virginia Tech, Duke, Carolina. I think Clemson and Florida State are trying to play in a different circle. But again, Louisville and Miami, those brands make tremendous sense for the Big 12. They do. I think Louisville basketball has to get back to being a powerhouse. It'd be nice to see Louisville football being a powerhouse. Like, I think you can have access to that with more money. And I think that as every day ticks by and we don't have Florida State, Clemson, and the ACC figuring themselves out, the Big 12 is in a better position. Every day that there's instability in the ACC, it's better for the Big 12.
And all the Big 12 has to do is not screw it up.
Just wait it out. UW fan Jim, was that $800 million before the pedo payouts?
The pedo payouts.
Oak State James, Syracuse has more New York City fans than UConn does.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, I'd much rather have UConn than Syracuse. And again, Syracuse fan, I get it. Every Syracuse fan in the world comes out of the woodwork.
Oh, well, we bleed orange, man.
Well, when's the last time Syracuse was relevant in something?
Well, Monty, badminton team was really good last year.
Asking for a friend. Asking for a friend. Tanner Plumer. It's probably already been talked about, but Preston Stone had some shaky moments against Nevada.
Yeah, that's putting it nicely.
He got yanked from that game. Now, came back, performed admirably through the touchdowns. I mean, the city of Dallas and the county of Dallas rejoiced.
Dude, just holy cow, our boy has arrived.
Yes, Tanner, they were the first to bring up how Preston was pulled. He's going to be good.
This is a family show, bro. Can you chill?
Better start stroking. Has natural talent, but he has some growth to do.
Oh, does he? Does he?
You got to get stroked.
Now, are we talking about growth in talent or growth in inches?
'Cause-
James, I'm going to need you to clarify that. Tanner Plummer, BYU is going to make Preston Stone look stupid next week.
Okay.
Okay. Midweek Coug, Big 12 should only add UConn in basketball. They bring nothing else. Potentially. You know, Mike Smith, McNabb, and Carmelo. Willie Wilson, UConn with one N. So they're just a con. Is just a piece of this realignment puzzle. We'll find out. Oak State James, the Big 12 has a strong foothold in Texas. The next place they need more teams is Florida. Adding FSU and Miami will get you a foothold in Florida.
You're not getting both, dude.
I'm telling you, I have a very hard time believing that Florida State football ever plays under the Big 12 shield. How? We all play this game. Wow, Greg Sankey said. Okay, again, Florida State wins their lawsuit. Hey, Greg, it's Jimmy Dickhole at Florida State. We want to join your league. You think is he going to take that call? Yeah, he's taking that call. Hey, Tony Petiti.
Hey, Tone.
It's Florida State. We want to join the Big Ten. We can talk, but it's probably not going to happen.
And with all due respect,
they go to the SEC. Clemson, nobody cares. I'm telling you, Clemson, if they're not good this year, Dabo's done. They're irrelevant.
Dabo's new positioning statement on why he doesn't use the portal and why they don't leverage NIL more is because he believes that homegrown recruiting and development is the better way to build a program, not through the portal. That's the new positioning statement. Okay. All right, buddy.
Well, and Jesus is his recruiting director.
I mean, obviously,
built this
yeah.
program.
I mean, Jesus finds all the players.
In God's name, image, and likeness.
Mike Smith, Preston is a grower, not a shower.
Right,
good point.
right.
Last time Syracuse was relevant was when Empire McNabb was throwing up chunks into his face mask.
Well,
that's a good point, Tanner.
Yeah, really well done there.
Was when Emperor McNabb was leading the Orangemen.
Right.
You know. Mr. Preston, good morning, boys. I'm not Preston Stone, but I should do.
Yeah.
You'll do.
Yeah.
You'll do.
Right.
I'm just so you can go to Pound Town.
I'm not Preston Stone, but I'll do. Exactly. Sankey said no to FSU. When did he say no to FSU? I don't recall that. Why would he change his mind when Florida is trying to block FSU? The Big 12 is not as good as the SEC, but better than the ACC. To my knowledge, Greg Sankey's never said no.
He has never publicly denied them coming to the SEC.
He has never said, no, we will not be adding Florida State.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, when's the last time a major conference commissioner said, yeah, we're going to add Florida State? Oh, but they're under contract and have a grant of rights with the ACC. That's never happened. Nobody is giving a definite, no, we're not adding Florida State. Never happened. Never happened. Never happened. Tanner, who's Empire McNabb? Exactly. Because he never built an empire. Ask Terrell Owens and ask the grounds crew at the Super Bowl. That, you know. You and Donovan McNabb,
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Hour number 2 of the Monty Show, as always, presented by our good friends at Canyons Golf. Canyons Golf in Park City, the official golf resort of the Monty Show. Park City Mountain Resort, Canyons Village is where you find Canyons Golf. Cannot wait Saturday. Be back up there hitting bombs. Even though that damn driver has betrayed me. I'll be back up there hitting bombs. One of the things I love about golf is that it truly is a game of practice, not a game of playing. And my God, I need to practice. But the point is, if you're going to play crappy golf, you might as well do it in a beautiful surrounding like Canyons Golf at Park City Mountain Resort. Lush fairways, green fairways, elevated tee boxes, beautiful wildlife, beautiful surroundings at municipal prices. That's the best part of it, friends. Why? And you guys know on the show, I am not a fan of Mountain Dell. I think it's one of the worst courses in Salt Lake City. Why would you stop at Mountain Dell when you can go up to Park City Mountain Resort and pay the same price, and actually it's cheaper during the week? Go get it. And if you become a member at Canyons Resort, the best part is you get monthly tournaments, you get food, you get all this stuff, you get preferential access to tee times.
The carts are way nicer.
It's super easy to love golf when you play at Park City Mountain Resort. Go see our guy, Darren Ingram. He is the PGA pro and the director of golf at Canyons Golf. Great teacher. He's my swing coach. Go hook it up. Tell him you heard about it on the Monty Show. This Connor Stallion situation is very interesting.
Sign stealer guy.
So Connor Stallions, the Connor Stallions documentary was released on Netflix yesterday. Connor Stallions in this documentary, I have not seen it, apparently denies any advanced scouting with the purpose of stealing signs. He says that there exists a network of coaches and analysts that share information. And he says he has no need to do advanced scouting because he gets all the game tape from the other teams, which, as we've told you on this show, not to be Nostramonti, but as we've told you on this show, teams upload their game tapes, which is full view. The signs going into the game are on the game tapes. It's the all 12, the full field shot. That's all uploaded to an NCAA database so that your future opponents have access to your game tape and can scout you. The genesis of that was, hey, we're going to ban in-person scouting because we want to save money. It was never for the purpose of stopping sign stealing. I don't know how many people realize that. In-person scouting is banned because it was expensive. But still, to the point, it's banned. It's illegal. Connor Stallion says he didn't do it. He never paid people to go to games. He didn't buy people tickets to go to games to scout. He says he bought people tickets because he's a nice guy and he would transfer them to their name, or he just bought tickets. Do you expect us to believe that, sir? And then when he was presented with more difficult questioning, his attorney ended the interview. And when he was asked about being on the sidelines at CMU, he ended the interview and denied it. Even though it is well known at this point that the NCAA's findings says Well, yeah, it turns out you were on the sideline. And to their end, Central Michigan is doing exactly what Connor Stallions should be doing, which is not Netflix documentaries while you volunteer as a head coach or a defensive coordinator at a high school in Detroit. Central Michigan is saying they can't talk about it. And CMU has fully cooperated with the NCAA's ongoing investigation, and we will continue to cooperate. NCAA bylaws expressly prohibit sign stealer guy CMU from publicly commenting on the details of this case at this time. We are eager. Oh, you're eager. We're eager to bring this matter to a fair and prompt conclusion and to share what we know. We appreciate the patience and the support of our community. Even though it's pretty much been known that he was on the sideline.
Yeah.
My friends, I don't know why Connor Stallions did this documentary. I think it was a huge mistake. Because all the evidence that we've seen, the Venmo account, the ticket accounts, the cloud accounts, the people who were alleged that they were paid and given phones and told to film the sideline. And maybe the most interesting part of this whole thing is that Connor Stallions is saying there's a whole network of analysts who steal signs from game day tape and share the information with each other. Well, I totally believe that. 100% I believe that. I also believe, in my opinion, that Connor Stallions absolutely ran a sign stealing operation. And I believe the people when they say, hey, he paid us to go to games, gave us tickets, told us what to do. We uploaded to the cloud, bada boom, bada bing.
Yeah.
It was raining, so I left. I only did the first half. Fuck him.
Yeah, he didn't pay me enough to stand in the rain.
That's what the guy said. Well, it was raining.
Yeah, what do you want me to do?
What am I, driving a golf cart that goes 5 miles an hour in a pelting rainstorm?
Yeah.
That's what happened to me on Sunday. I think this whole thing is, and that you're denying this now.
Yeah, he also says in the documentary that when they provided him, the folks he sent out to scout, when they provided him with the signs, he didn't turn them away because it's akin to your aunt giving you a gift you already had. You're not going to disrespect your aunt. You're just going to say, yeah, I don't want to be rude. I'm just going to say, hey, thanks. I really appreciate it. But I already had those signs.
Stallion said, I had friends send me film. It's kind of like when your aunt gets you a Christmas gift and you already have. You're not going to be rude and be like, oh, I already have this. I don't need that. It's, oh, thanks. Appreciate it. They feel like they're helping out when I already have the signals. I've already memorized the signals. An NCAA investigator, according to ESPN, asked Stallions whether he was the man standing on the Central Michigan bench wearing team-issued gear and sunglasses for the 2023 opener against Michigan State, coincidentally, the night before Michigan's first game in Ann Arbor. Stallions replied that he didn't recall attending the specific game.
I don't know. I don't know if.
Come on, bro.
Then, of course, Dave Portnoy, you prick, injects himself into this.
Yeah.
Although Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy says in the documentary that Stallions admitted to him being on the Central Michigan sideline.
Dude.
Stallions attorney Brad Beckwith of Austin, Texas. Hey, Texas is back. Interjects during the interview, claiming that Stallions' personal information was illegally breached, which led to the NCAA probe of Michigan.
Because it's illegal.
If that's true, it's certainly a violation of civil law, and it may be a bigger crime, the attorney tells the NCAA investigator.
I don't break the rules.
And if true, that came from somebody associated with or tied to the Ohio State University.
Oh.
And we think it was. That's where, if I was going to try and do the right thing, I might be focusing. When the NCAA investigator declines to provide how the information about Stallions was obtained, the interview came to a shocking, stark end. You don't know how you're at the bottom if you don't have a guy who focuses on that, Stallion said, because Michigan was at the bottom of an intelligence operation totem pole.
Uh-huh. I'm sure. Man.
Oh, come on. Come on.
I mean, this is where we're at in the world now. You guys notice this? Like this is just another guy who's lying to himself to make it all go away, and it's never going to go away, dude. Like, that's what this is. I don't recall. Hey, when have we seen this before?
What?
Like,
Me?
how many times are we going to get I don't recall guys showing up? Like, come on, dude.
What? Me?
I don't recall.
And I love it that if it was Ohio State saying I don't recall, Michigan fans would be like, ah! But now it's your guy, Khan, and you're like, what? He said he didn't remember. I take him at his word.
I've never taken steroids.
Terrell Pryor doesn't remember any of those tattoos. Ah! Like,
Never.
but Marty, it was just cheeseburgers for those hungry kids.
I want you to listen to me.
Jim Harbaugh's a humanitarian, and God damn it, he's a father too.
I'm going to say this again.
He has love for them kids. And he was just buying a hungry boy a cheeseburger.
You never cheat, you never lie, and you never steal.
I am amazed by it. I am amazed that Michigan just... Connor, why are you doing this documentary?
Monty?
Why? I'm asking for a friend. Why? Well, I didn't do anything that nobody else is doing. Right, but they haven't gotten caught. So I don't recall getting caught. Well, we have you on, we have you on public record. Here's your Venmo account where you sent Dale Johnson over here to Jimmy's Technical Institute of Sewing. And he says it was raining, so he left at the half, but he did videotape the signs coming in from the sewing machine repair company school. Well, who's that?
What the fuck are you, Ranger Rick?
You know how many friends I have named Jimmy? Including Jimmy Harbaugh? You know Jimmy Harbaugh. Him and I fed the hungry kids together.
I would never send anybody out to advance scout.
Fucking Harbaugh too. Harbaugh's like, I don't remember meeting what recruit.
Cheeseburger. I had a chicken sando that day. Come on.
What? Who? I don't remember that recruit. Yeah, here's your text message to him. Oh, that guy. Yeah. A lot of people text message for me.
I don't know. I don't know if I don't quite know how to answer that.
Have you talked to my analyst Connor Stallions? He texts for me all the time.
And pardon me.
He'll be back. He just ran over to Central Michigan real quick. He'll be back in 10 minutes.
You ought to know you bought it.
Right?
Come on, dude. Like,
what are we doing?
Your best defense is I don't recall. The best that you can do is I don't remember. Come on, bro.
I do declare that I do not recall. And those
I mean, who are you, Bill Clinton? Like, come on, dude.
Do you know why I pulled you over? No. You were speeding. Me?
What?
No. Where were you going? I'm just heading over to Central Michigan University, sir.
I need to go home.
Give me a free pass? Kickoff's here in 10 minutes, and these sunglasses are expensive.
I don't recall doing 100 and a 25.
Sir, can you explain to me why you were doing 100 wearing sunglasses at night?
It's a wee fence.
Are you recording me? What's that blinking light on those sunglasses, son? I'm just here to buy cheeseburgers for hungry kids, officer.
Like, come on, dude. And then Michigan fans going to be surprised when you get piped by the NCAA again. Come on. Come on, man.
Yeah, anyway. UW fan Jim says college football is back. Yes, it is. And you've been a member for 13 years. I told you Roman Dusley was going to be all pro.
Yeah.
All right. Midweek Coug, officer, I do not recall speeding. So I was talking to a dude yesterday, a friend of mine. He got pulled over and got in an argument with the cop. The cop yanked him out of the car.
What?
Because he wouldn't give him his driver's license. Now, I've known this guy for 10 years. And he's not this guy. And you know what he said? You know, I heard you talk about this on your show that you shouldn't talk to cops. And I said, well, why did you talk to the cops then? Because I wasn't speeding. Did you tell him that? Yes.
Yeah.
Did you tell him that you don't talk to cops? No.
No.
What did you tell him? Well, I told him I was driving from, I don't want to give away where he is, Chicago to Northbrook, Illinois. And he asked me if I had been drinking. And I said, don't tell me you answered that question. I told him I had one. I was like, oh, you're done. Just, if you get pulled over, do not answer the police's questions.
It's a wrong question.
Do you know why I pulled you over? I do not, sir. But I don't answer questions. Am I being detained or am I free to go? Nope, you're being detained. Can I see your license and insurance information? Here you go.
We're in a control position.
Do you know you were speeding? Yeah, I don't answer questions. Where were you going? I don't answer questions, and I am going to invoke my Fifth Amendment rights. Okay. Inevitably, if you just say to the police officer, if you get pulled over, this is my advice to you. Have your license and registration. Roll down the window if you want. Hand them your license and registration, and don't answer any questions. Don't be a dick about it, but just say, he's going to say, hey, I'm Officer Jimmy John with the blank state patrol. Do you know why I pulled you over? I don't answer questions, sir. Here's my driver's license and registration. That's what I would probably do.
Yeah.
And if he says, if he doesn't take it, say, okay, well, I don't answer questions, sir. Am I being detained or am I free to go? That's how I would handle it.
Not be an asshole and get pulled out of the car, bro.
He claims he said to the cop, I don't have to give you my license. And the cop, I think, actually tried to help him because the cop said, actually, you do. And I haven't asked you for it yet.
And there's nothing you can do to me to make me do it.
Chill, bro.
I don't answer questions. Am I free to go or am I being detained? You're being detained. Okay, here's my license and registration.
No, I'm not doing that.
If they ask you to get out of the car, get out of the car. If they ask you how many drinks have you had, I don't answer questions. Where are you coming from? Sorry, sir, I'm not talking about my day. Am I free to go? You're not? Okay, I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment rights. It will never get that far. 9 out of 10 times, if you say I don't answer questions, I appreciate you have a job to do, sir, but I don't answer questions from law enforcement. Am I being detained or am I free to go? And they're going to say, you're being detained. Can I see your driver's license and registration? Absolutely. Here you are.
That's it.
That's it. And if they ask you another question, say I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment rights. And they will walk away. They will write you your ticket and you will go about your day. Can I search your car? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's not that difficult. Well, I smell weed. That doesn't mean you can search my car. I'm telling you, you need to know your laws, but the answer is no, absolutely not. And if they say, okay, we need you to step out of the vehicle, step out of the vehicle. Do not fight the cops.
Yeah.
Do not fight the cops.
It's not going to end well for you.
You can win in court. Do not fight the cops. That's all I'm telling you. At least when Reagan said he didn't recall, it may have been plausible. Very true. As well as Joe Biden. Joe Biden don't recall. I believe you, sir. I believe you. That's what I'm saying. Get out of the car if they ask. It's a lawful order with a case history, Pennsylvania versus. Yeah. I think people want to play this game where they get hard ass with the cops. That's never the right answer. You can say no if they ask to search your car. If a police officer orders you out of the car, get out of the car. Get out of the car. That's it. There's nothing else to talk about. You're not trying to get out of the infraction or get out of the search. All you're doing by telling them, I'm not answering your questions, I'm pleading the fifth, and no, you may not search my vehicle. You're creating a defense for when you're in court. That's all you're doing. Do not fight the cops. Do not be an asshole. Their job is hard enough. Be polite. Say it nicely. And when they ask you for your license and registration, give it to them. And when they say get out of the car, get out of the car. It's that simple. San Diego State Glenn, I do not recall. Donnie isn't the original, but he has surely taken it to a new level. Absolutely, he has. The eye patch never helped the police investigate you. Fifth Amendment and film the situation. I would always videotape. Cops are terrified of cameras. They're not terrified of cameras. Cameras are just it's your First Amendment right. And it is another level of accountability. It's as simple as that. And if you're unclear about the laws, my recommendation to you is educate yourself about the laws in your city, your state. Educate yourself. Understand that, for instance, in the state of California, I don't know how many people realize this, the smell of marijuana is not probable cause. They cannot search your vehicle because they smell marijuana. And yet, how many people are like, sure, go ahead and search. You're only helping them. That's what I'm saying. Mike Smith, actually, if they claim they smell weed, they can search your car. They cannot. Probable again, I encourage you, understand your jurisdiction, your city, and your state. It varies. A lot of municipalities now, for instance, California, smell of marijuana is not probable cause for a search. They have to see paraphernalia. They have to see actual marijuana. It is not probable cause. I don't know your city and your town and your state. I'm telling you, if a cop asks you to search, say no. And if they say, well, I smell marijuana, get out of the car, get out of the car. Fight the veracity of the search in court. It's that simple. Never consent to a search of your car. Make them do the work to get the warrant. Most times they won't. From a law enforcement veteran.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think a lot of it is your mentality and your behavior. If you are combative with the cops, it's not going to end well. Know your rights. It's not. I think a lot of people think they have to do what cops tell you to do. Do you understand why they're asking you how fast you were going? If a cop walks up to you and says to you, hey, do you know how fast you were going? Why do you think he's asking you that question? Because he wants you to say, yeah, I'm sorry. I know I was speeding. Okay, you're done. Whereas if you say, I don't answer questions, sir. Am I being detained or am I free to go? You're not helping them. Why would you help them put more charges on you? That's what I'm trying to tell you. What's up, guys? What did I miss? Nothing.
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 Nothing at all.
Not a thing. In California, you have 3 stages of law: state, county, and city. It's a very complex, but the state law, I believe, I'm 99.9% sure the smell of marijuana is not probable cause in California. Exigent circumstances are also a way that cops can circumvent the Fourth Amendment. Courts will uphold it most times. Sure. All I'm telling you is don't help the cops. Well, they can search your car, but they will be breaking the Fourth Amendment right. You will have, we're getting in the weeds.
Yeah.
All I'm telling you is if a cop asks you to get out of the car, get out of the car. If a cop pulls you over, he has probable cause to identify who you are. Because if he's going to write you a citation for speeding, it's a lawful command to identify yourself. Give him your driver's license and your proof of insurance, man. It's as simple as that. There's no point. Do you know how difficult it is to do the job of a police officer? It's impossible. Another day, another Pat McAfee controversy. This is crazy now.
Mm-hmm.
From the New York Post. Ryan Leaf alleges Pat McAfee is high 80% of the time on his ESPN show. Oh, boy. This is not a surprise. Do I agree with Ryan Leaf? I don't know. Do I believe him? I do. I think this last 3 weeks has been a disaster for Pat McAfee. Even further than that, the issue with Caitlin Clark into this situation in Ireland where he was, in my opinion, drunk on air, drinking on air. This Ryan Leaf interview that he did with Outkick is wildly right-wing conservative sports media. You wouldn't expect anything less than them going after ESPN. But Ryan Leaf went on Outkick and talked about how Pat McAfee and Kirk Herbstreit allegedly got him fired from ESPN. And that all this conversation does is further the narrative that Pat McAfee's a problem for ESPN. And it seems like monthly now we're getting controversies. It seems like all the time, all we're hearing is Pat McAfee did this. Pat McAfee said that. Pat McAfee drank this. Pat McAfee smoked that. And I just don't know at what point does it become too much for ESPN?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I don't know. I think that, ESPN, obviously wants the views, but I have to say, the Ireland situation was not a good one because the issue is like, there's a couple of stages, in my opinion, to hosts like Pat making problems. So like, if you like the Caitlin Clark thing, if you say something you shouldn't on your show, that's like one level, right? Like, hey, you were doing the show, you either misspoke or said something you shouldn't have, and some people reported it. Okay, that's one like level to it. But I think there's another level to it when we're getting, Pat McAfee videos coming out Friday night all over X of him just being trashed in these Irish bars. Like, and when I say trashed, I'm talking about shirtless Pat McAfee behind a bar, clearly intoxicated, having, by all accounts, a ton of fun with folks in this pub. And on its face, I wouldn't necessarily have an issue with that per se. Like, cool, go have fun. But when you're out internationally or at any work-related event representing your company, that's a problem. And so for that reason, that was where the issue started. And then I would agree. There is a plethora of video of him on air being absolutely just super drunk. And there's a clip specifically where there's a Guinness sitting in front of him on his set. He picks it up, goes to drink it, but then doesn't drink it and like shakes his head like, yeah, I don't think I can drink any more of that. And like sets it back down. And it just is not a great look. It's not how you want to be, let's say he doesn't like ESPN. Okay, they've got history. Okay, throw ESPN aside. It's not how Pat should be representing himself in his own brand. And that's where I was like, dude, this is going down a bad path now. This is not a great look, like at all on any level.
On top of the Dan Orlovsky protect our girl dad comments where Dan deleted a tweet about, and Pat talked about this. Pat got the transgender boxing issue at the Olympics completely wrong. And then you have Dan Orlovsky deleting a tweet about protecting our daughters. And it just is a bad look when you have a guy like Pat McAfee calling Caitlin Clark, what did he call her? A white bee. On top of all this other stuff.
Yeah, it's a mess. I mean, that's the best way I could describe it for ESPN. It's an absolute mess.
And then you fire Ponder and Griffin or lay them off. You laid off multiple members of the C-suite yesterday in a reorg that shook that building again. And Pat's just out here allegedly smoking weed and being high 80% of the time, according to Ryan Leaf. I don't know when the end of the line comes for Pat at ESPN. It's not that far away, in my opinion.
Well, and I think the allegation that Pat's high 80% of the time, like on its face, like I wouldn't even necessarily have a huge issue with that if that was like something he needed to do his job well. Like there are a lot of people, both athletically and in the professional arena, that need that really actually do better with that. But I think that the problem for Pat is that doesn't seem to be the case. The problem is that, let's say that it is true. Let's say that he is high 80% of the time and the allegation is factual and spot on. Okay, if he's high 80% of the time on air, it almost goes a long way to explain why he does some of the stuff he does. Why,
I would agree.
Like why you thought it was okay to call Caitlin Clark that, or why
you misspeak consistently
all the time,
or get lost in thought all the time.
Yeah.
Or
yes.
And I look at him being a WWF performer guy, being a former football player. He's mercurial. He is funny. He is entertaining. He is a pain in the ass. He is, I don't think, worth the headache for somebody like ESPN, who needs Pat McAfee desperately to be good at his job. And is Pat entertaining? Yes. Do I watch Pat? I don't anymore. The Caitlin Clark thing was probably the end of the road for me. But I just have a tough time. I have a tough time getting behind the idea that somehow, some way, this is the guy that you want helming your sports talk in the middle of the day. And I understand that he is critical to your football presentation. Hundo P, bro.
And
Totally
I think he brings a good element to game day. For game day, I think it's, most of the time it's helpful. There are a lot of funny moments, a lot of iconic things that have happened with him on that show, but there's also a lot of things that he said that are not great. The Washington State stuff last year, like there are some things that are not great. So it is the very definition of who Pat is as a dude. He is going to show up and be himself, and there's a lot of times that that's not great for ESPN, and then there are some times where it's great. And so to your point, like the question is the bad worth what he brings? Worth
I don't
the
know.
views?
I don't know.
And so then you point out the C-suite shakeup, and I think that very question is going to get answered. You don't shake up your C-suite and then think that nothing's going to change.
Yeah, I don't know where it ends. ESPN is a very elite organization. They do not do anything accidentally. They do not do anything without considerable time, effort, revenue put into what the right thing to do is. This is a mistake. The Pat McAfee hosting his show live on their air is a mistake. And I think at some point, and my guess is after this season, something will change, because I think they knew what they were getting with Pat. They didn't know to what extent he would go. Pat's always been part of what's great about Pat is you don't know what he's going to say.
Right.
He very much is what Howard Stern once was on the radio, right? Like he had no idea what he was going to say, so you're going to watch. But at some point, he is going to cost you money. And in today's world, that's the problem. And I think he has probably cost you money. You look at the way things are going with marketing dollars and advertising dollars. This thing at Twitter is very similar. Elon Musk and Pat McAfee inside of their organizations are very similar people. There are multiple advertisers in the last week, allegedly, who have canceled their buys with Twitter because their ads are appearing on racist, misogynist, anti-Semitic content in comment sections of posts that once were banned. And then when Elon took over the company, he pulled those reins off. And so these advertisers, there are watchdogs who read these, like these neo-Nazi groups that use Twitter now without a leash.
Right.
And Twitter is putting ads in their comment sections for these big groups. And those big groups don't necessarily see that, because when you advertise on X, you don't see where your ad is placed. So watchdogs look for it and send it to those advertisers. And by some accounts, they've lost multiple advertising partners now because of it. And ESPN, I think, realizes the same thing that X is realizing with Elon. ESPN's realizing that with Pat. Not all press is good press, because I think ESPN is probably aware that there are people not advertising on Pat's time slot because of Pat and things that Pat has said and done. And at some point, that weight
ratio,
you're never on the right side of that conversation. You're never on the right side of that conversation. It just is not how sports media in 2024 works, because every dollar counts now with the amount of rights fees that ESPN pays on a quarterly basis. And it's outrageous. You can't afford one partner to walk away. You cannot afford it. And I think that ESPN is well aware of that. And the minute that Pat becomes negative equity, I think that's when you're going to start to see that the deal becomes different.
Well, and I think the bigger issue for ESPN as well is, like, let's say that say that were to take place, and they, before the season's over, view him as negative equity. Who are you going to replace him with? What are you going to bring in that maybe, because I don't think there's anything that's comparable X's and O's wise to what Pat does. I think that it's part of why he's been so successful. They have just such a unique setup. So I think for ESPN, the trouble also is that now that he's in there doing that, then when he leaves the network, because eventually he'll leave the network, it will happen at some point. I mean, everybody comes and goes. So when Pat does leave, whether that's after this season or 10 years from now, what do you replace that with? And how can you add more value back?
But you know what the problem is? Pat McAfee is good at his job.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer in sports talk is in this country. It's not sports talk radio anymore. It's not. And I think it is live streaming sports talk. I don't have any doubt that that's what it is. But at some point, ESPN is going to figure out what to do with that time slot. At some point. And right now, maybe we're not at that point. But at some point, we're going to get there. And I think Pat McAfee is incredibly important to an entire generation of sports talk fans who rely on him. That's who he's letting down with the white bee comments, with the drunk in a bar stuff, with the chugging beer on ESPN, because it is wholly owned by Disney at this moment. And I don't know. I hope it does not come to this thing where we get whitewashed, static. Here's my opinion on sports talk. I think the Big 12 is a great football conference. What a tragedy we lost the Pac-12. All right, let's talk about the U.S. Open. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
I think Pat McAfee it was, for a large swath of people, the face of sports talk. I think the upper end of his demographics are shrinking. I think the young guy, the 18 to 30-year-old guy, loves Pat McAfee, loves the chugging, loves the wrestling, and I get that. But what happens when you become a dad and you're 35 years old? Are you down for Pat McAfee being drunk at a bar? You're probably not.
No.
You're probably not. You're not.
Yeah.
And the other part of this is Pat McAfee will always bring the younger demo. How many 18-year-olds even know he kicked in the NFL?
Yeah.
I think more 18-year-olds.
Question.
I think more 18-year-olds know Pat McAfee from WWE than they do anything else, which is great. I totally get it. But I know Pat McAfee is a guy who's burned out at every stop, whether that's Barstool or he had the massive FanDuel deal now at ESPN. It seems like there's a burnout factor, and ESPN's finding that out. And my guess is his listenership is finding that out. I hope, dude, I hope the guy makes it because I think sports talk is dying on the radio in this country. And it's tragic. I'm somebody that spent a good part of my adult life doing exactly what I'm doing right now. And I love doing it every day. I don't love the grind of selling ads and partnerships, and I don't love that part of it. I'm very much like Pat. I love the 2 hours, 3 hours I do this show every day. Everything else that comes with it, I could take it or leave it.
Sure.
But I just don't think that Pat truly understands that he is messing this up right now.
Yeah,
I don't think he understands it.
Yeah, I just think that, I don't think he's ever appreciated the responsibility he has because of how big the show is and what the positive impact that he could create and obviously the negative impact that he, can and does routinely create. And that's the hard part is like, I just think that he could be so much more than he is now if he just took it just even a touch more seriously.
He could be Jim Rome. He could be the biggest sports talk guy ever.
Yeah.
Ever. And I think you're right. He just doesn't. It's hard when you're in the moment. As somebody who has been, and you guys will be like, as somebody who's been the #1 rated host in multiple markets in this country, and as somebody who, when I was at ESPN Radio, dude, I felt the weight of being at ESPN Radio. Like, hearing from people I haven't talked to in 20 years in a different town that I didn't even know where they were, it's a big platform. It's awesome. It is so much fun. But you know how many guys get into that spot, especially guys who played in the NFL? Not NBA players, not Major League Baseball players, but guys who played in the NFL. Do you know how many Sean Salisbury stories are out there? Do you know how many Pat McAfee stories are out there? They've already been to the top of the mountain because they were a quarterback or a punter or a linebacker in the NFL, so they don't necessarily appreciate it. It's what's amazing about a guy like a Stephen A. Smith who loves every flipping minute of it. And I give, as much as I don't enjoy Stephen A.'s content, I give that guy a lot of credit for building an empire, especially for somebody that is a man of color in this country. Do you know how difficult that is to break through media barriers when you're black and you are loud and you are outspoken? Like, so you're Pat McAfee, you played in the NFL, you're in the WWE, and you just don't seem outwardly, in my opinion, to appreciate the platform that you have.
Yep.
It's wild to me.
Yep.
Especially in an era where regular radio, sports talk radio is dead. It is, and largely it's self-imposed. Not that you guys give a rat's ass about this. It's self-imposed. The lack of talent development and the lack of money being spent on coaching sports talk talent, that's why the medium's dying.
Totally agree.
Because people do what we do.
Yeah.
We certainly weren't the first, but I think we are probably one of the more successful shows. We're supposedly, according to YouTube, top 5% of all sports talk streams in the world. We just take it more seriously than most people do. We take it very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Pat McAfee takes it very seriously. At least not from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I'd agree.
That's the hard part.
And that's why stuff like Ireland happens.
Yeah, that's why Ireland happens. And to everybody on Twitter, to everybody on Facebook, like it is crazy to me that you guys watch this show every day and we appreciate you.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Don't have time to do news today. Maybe another day.
Yeah.
The Monty Show is always presented by our good friends at The Advocates, theadvocates.com, the best injury attorneys in the business. Look it up. Get online. Talk to an injury attorney 24/7, 365. If you get in an accident driving to work today, if you get in an accident at work today, take it seriously because your insurance company is not going to help you. Your insurance company is not going to fight for you. The Advocates will fight for you. They want you to get the very best deal because the Advocates don't get paid unless you do. Yeah, you don't pay the Advocates unless and until they win your case. So no consultation fees, no retainers. Chat with an injury attorney live online, 365, 24/7, 365. It won't cost you a dime. Until tomorrow, say goodbye, Jake.
Goodbye, Jake.